Hi, Commissioner.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Deborah, I'm just passing on that Dawn's going to be a few minutes late. We were at Buena Vista Horace Mann with Commissioner Alexander and Supervisor Ronan, and she's speedily pedaling home, but she says she'll be about 5 minutes and that we should get started without her.
Okay, Commissioner Sanchez, that's your call. Can't hear you, Commissioner Sanchez.
Karen, good to see you here. Don't have
Commissioner
anybody
Sanchez?
else.
Can you guys not hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Dawn was going to be late, so her staff said that we can start without her. That was your call. She was going to be about 5 minutes late.
I see Deputy Superintendent Lee's hand is up.
Go ahead, Meow.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm just sort of observing that Commissioner Sanchez is sending me a note that his sound isn't working. Can I, he's calling me. Is it okay if I
Yeah.
help?
Is there something I can do on my end, Myung, do you think?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I am wondering if Commissioner Sanchez has the Zoom invite. Maybe he can dial in on his phone while being here for audio.
Or if I make him a co-host, will that make a difference? Or a host?
Try.
Hello.
Hi, I'm gonna hang up and I'll try to get on through my phone.
We're having technical difficulties?
Yes. I made you a co-host, Commissioner, so try that.
Okay, I'm gonna log off. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can.
I just went on a different laptop. So sorry about that.
Okay.
Do we have translation?
Do we have what? I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Do we have translation?
No, not today. None was requested.
All right. So just give me a second to get my. Okay.
Recording in progress.
This is the Augmented Buildings, Grounds and Services Committee meeting for February 28th, 2022. Getting started at 5:05. Deborah, can you take note of the commissioners present for this meeting?
Thank you, Commissioner. I will.
Okay. We have 3 items. Oh, actually, why am I'm sorry, guys. We have 3 informational items. Do we want to take them in order? Chief Kamalanathan?
Ideally, Commissioner, yes, I think.
Okay.
Just, I believe, yes. Unless you have if you have another preference, I'm happy to be flexible.
No, I just wanted to know because of the CBOC folks, if they wanted to go earlier in their presentation.
I think our other presentations will be pretty brief.
Okay.
You can
So
stick to the
we'll
agenda.
go with the status update on the Shirley Chisholm Village project for educator housing located at 1360 43rd Avenue. Take it away. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Chief Kamalanathan, if it's okay, I'm just going to provide a little bit of an introduction and then turn it over to Ali Gaylord from MidPen. Great. So thank you, commissioners, for providing some time for this exciting update. It has been at least several months since the last informational update about the project, but we're happy to say that the project, perhaps quietly, does continue to move forward. And as we shared at the special meeting last Thursday, which I know not everybody was here from the public, but I believe all 3 commissioners present heard that update. We are excited to say that we do expect to secure our financing on the project very shortly. Thank you for your approvals at the last special meeting of the options to ground lease. And we expect to break ground later this year in calendar 2022 and then proceed to take the next steps towards beginning occupancy in 2024. All of this is going to be included in the presentation, but just wanted to offer a little bit of a preview of some of the information that you'll hear momentarily. So as you know, SFUSD has been in a partnership for several years with the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development and also MidPen Housing. This is our very first and very exciting brick and mortar educator housing development. And this is the product of many years of discussion, many years of conceptual conversations, and we're really excited about being so close to actual tangible progress being made. So with that, the primary presenter is going to be Alicia Gaylord from MidPen, and she is one of the senior project managers for MidPen and for this project. We're working closely with her and her team, as well as partners at the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development. So Ms. Gaylord, would you mind just taking it away from here?
Sure. Thank you, Myung, and good evening, commissioners. I'm pleased to be here today to be presenting a project update for the Shirley Chisholm Village project. Should I just say one slide should advance? Okay, next slide, please. I know Myung just gave a great little bit of background, but we'll just cover a little bit more background, project update, and then next steps this evening. Next slide, please. Okay, so the project, in addition to all the work that has been done before up to now, recently approved the framework for the future resident preferences over the summer. And this last Thursday, as Myung mentioned, the full board also approved the options to lease, which was the next stage that we needed to get to in order to apply for our funding, our tax credit funding. Shirley Chisholm Village will be located on the FSK Annex site in the Sunset neighborhood and is 134 units of affordable educator and district housing with one on-site manager's unit. The low and moderate income housing targets will be for families earning or households earning between 40 and 100% of the San Francisco area median income. We were able to include a variety of amenities for the residents on site, which we'll talk about a little bit later when we look at some of the architectural renderings. We're really proud to be able to include outdoor and indoor space for the community to use, which is really a great asset and great community building for the new residents and the existing residents in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. I think you're all probably familiar, but just wanted to do a little bit of location checking here. The site, as you can see, is located between 42nd and 43rd Avenue, between Irving and Judah, about 6 blocks to the beach and about 2 blocks from Golden Gate Park. So it's a really ideally located site for educators. The end Judah is about a half a block away, so super transit oriented for this location, and commercial areas close by. It's just a wonderful site for housing location. Next slide. And as you all know, the Francis Scott Key Annex building was deemed seismically unsafe. So for 20 or so more years, it's been not in use for school teaching uses. It's been administrative and storage. And at one time, the children's book project was there. And next slide. Through some community engagement, it really transformed into being used as playland at 43rd Avenue, which is the current temporary use of the kind of parking lot area as programming for the neighborhood, yoga classes, there's a ping pong table. It's just kind of a great gathering place and a great nexus for people to just kind of gather. There's birthday parties there, community events that are organized and really has been stewarded by the Friends of Playland and Sunset Youth Services. Next slide. Now I'll go into the project overview and update phase. So all the quiet work that has been done before and kind of where we are today. Next slide. So this is a great part about talking about some pretty pictures and where our educators and SFUSD employees are going to be able to live in the future. This is a view of the building from the 42nd Avenue facade. It's 4 stories from this facade, and we've broken up the massing and been able to really kind of articulate this building in a way to make it seem smaller than it is. I mean, the Sunset neighborhood has a lower density than downtown San Francisco or some other locations in San Francisco. So we were really trying to bring the scale of this building to meet with the existing neighborhood character. Next slide. And this slide, I'm using some of the same techniques on 43rd Avenue. This is the facade that the main entrance to the building will be on. Again, using different building materialities and different roof lines to break up the building and really seem like it's a smaller or collection of different buildings. At the street level, you can see what is a publicly accessible open space, a space for residents and the community to mingle and play area. And if we go to the next slide, we've got a kind of a zoomed in view of this area. So this has been designed by our landscape architect, Fletcher Associates, who does really great work in the community space realm. And they've done an excellent job of incorporating the sidewalk level of the building to incorporate planting materials, some seating, play area, so that both the residents and the future residents of the building and the current residents can use this as a kind of meeting place and really continue to develop the fabric of the neighborhood at this site. Next. Here's just a plan view of some of those elements that I was talking about. This is again along the 43rd Avenue side, where there's the primary resident entry, but then there's also all of this activated space right down on the ground level so that folks can really use this as a meeting area. Some bench seating, some movable furniture, and a ping pong table that we're reusing from the existing space. Next slide, please. And then we also just wanted to highlight some of the other kind of use spaces in the building, including the spaces that are for the residents, which are kind of in the red here. We've got some private resident courtyards. Additionally, on an upper floor, we have a resident kind of workroom, meeting room. During our development of the concept plans, we met with stakeholders. We did some para-educator and educator focus groups. And we really wanted to hear what was important to folks in a future living situation, something they may live in or what they thought would be important for housing, for educators. And we heard a lot about how much people collaborate, how they would like to be able to collaborate together. And so having these kind of more public spaces, but then also quieter spaces for meetings and collaboration were something that we've heard a lot about. So we've incorporated those as well. Next. And here is a little bit of a look back and look forward into our development process and timeline. As you can see, Mid-Penn was selected in 2018. We began community output and design land use approvals and have been working on the financing process for almost that long as well. We are anticipating securing our final piece of funding this summer, which is our tax credit, our low-income housing tax credit, and then being able to break ground on construction by the end of this year. And we've got about a 2-year construction period. So we'd be wrapping construction towards the end of 2024 or mid 2024 and being fully occupied by the end of 2024 or beginning of 2025. Next. We wanted to just highlight the funding sources for this development. Starting at the top, the mortgage loan, we will be going out to secure a private mortgage loan that will be covered by the basically by the rents that the folks pay to live at this building. There will be a long-term below market rate kind of residual receipts loan by the Mayor's Office of Housing of $46 million. Mid-Penn will provide a similar loan of $5 million. The low-income housing tax credit that we will be securing this summer is $25 million, and the value of the land that's leased at a below market rate to the project by the district is valued at over $20 million. So that is our total capital stack. Next. And then we also wanted to go through and just update folks. We know we've showed a few different ways of how the unit mix and income targeting might be laid out. We did kind of go through a few different iterations of which tax credit we might be able to access. So it did shift some of the income bands around a little bit. So we wanted to show where we're at today. So we have 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, and 120% of the area median income that will be targeted. And then you can see we have between studios and 3-bedroom apartments to make up the 135 total. Next. So here we've added to that breakdown the rent at each level, just to give you a sense of what each would be paying. And then next. And then this slide, just because it's got so much information, we've taken the last 2 slides and then just layered on what the income limit for each unit at each one of these AMI levels would be. So for example, a 2-bedroom unit at the 50% AMI level, that income limit for that household would be $59,950, and they would be paying $1,262 per month. And each of these income levels is set by MOCD, sets them based on what the area median income is. And then the amount of rent that can be charged at each one of these AMI levels is set at 30% of what that income is. So this is a household income. It's not just for the person or just the employee working at the district. It's the whole household. So that's why it varies based on the number of people and the number of people. And these are updated annually, like I said, by the Mayor's Office of Housing. And so these income limits and rents are updated annually. Next. And finally, our next step, next slide, please. So we will be coming back to the Board of Education the spring of this year to request approval of the final ground leases. We will be closing our construction financing probably towards the end of the summer. We're targeting August, and beginning construction thereafter. As I said before, hoping to complete construction and then begin lease up in fall of 2024 with final full occupancy in 2025. Next, I think that's it. And happy to take any questions if folks have any.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gaylord. And thank you, Myung and Ms. Gaylord, for the presentation. Let's see if there's any public comment before the board weighs in.
If you'd like to speak to this item, can you please raise your hand? Seeing none, Commissioner.
All right, thank you so much. Commissioners, any comments or questions? Okay. That was an easy one, Myung.
Commissioner Bogus had one.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And Myung had their hand up raised too. Did you want to comment first, Myung?
Oh, sure. I just wanted to say if we're almost ready to move on to another item, I was just going to say thank you to Karen Sullivan, who's here, who is working closely on this project now, as well as Suzanne Kim, providing advice, really important advice to us. And as commissioners know, Viva Mogi has now left the district. She has worked for years on this project as well as Lynn Bourgeau, who was our attorney on this project and is also recently is now a former colleague as of a couple weeks ago. So I just wanted to acknowledge the team effort here, as well as Don Kamalanathan, who has also been involved for several years on all of this housing work as well.
As well as UESF.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for mentioning UESF, Commissioner. We had a great briefing with the new leadership of UESF last week on the project as well.
Great. I'm sorry, Commissioner Bogus.
Thank you so much. I had a question. Just do we have an estimate on how many of the total units would actually have SFUSD staff in them? Just kind of understanding the provisions that kind of allow for other folks as well who are prioritized access. Is there any kind of major estimate of kind of like what that looks like as other developments?
Yes, I can speak to that. Commissioners, we have, in terms of the eligibility, we do have a priority in the sort of subscription process or in the lottery process for SFUSD educators. And we actually, this is information that's a few years old, but when we did multiple years of surveys of interests and needs for additional housing supports from our employees, we had good reason to believe that based on the numbers of especially our teachers that were responding to these surveys year after year, that there would be several times the interest in this type of opportunity compared to the number of units. So as Ms. Gaylord said, there are 134 units and about a third, a little less than a third of those units would correspond to income levels, roughly speaking, that would align with our paraeducators. And the other 70% or so would be probably more aligned with our teacher households. So in that light, we think and expect that all of the units would be taken up by SFUSD employees. If that didn't happen, if there was much less demand for the units than we expect, then it's only in those cases or in such a circumstance that non-SFUSD employees would be eligible to reside in the building.
No, I appreciate that clarity. I think the last question I just had, how are the I guess income rates impacted by, like, if we were to start paying people more, like is there a way that it would be adjusted to kind of match that, or is it actually kind of locked in such a way where if we pay people more, they actually would lose access to some of this housing?
Did you want me to respond, Mann?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead? I'll add into to what you have to say.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Commissioner. It is actually locked in once we, apply for our financing, and so we will have regulatory agreements with the Housing Tax Credit Agency and with the Mayor's Office of Housing as to what income bands we're promising. So yes, I think the answer to your question is if you were at I think especially at the very lowest of the AMI levels, especially because it could be potentially a household, and that income you wouldn't necessarily know just based on what you were paying that employee. So they could coming in lose out access to the opportunity, but if somebody was to make more money once they were already qualified, they would be able to continue to reside in that apartment.
And if I can build on that, just as a part two, for a given employee, given that there's sort of a tiered structure to the range of incomes that would be included in this development, if a particular employee was eligible for a particular set of units given their current salary, but based on prospective raises or other improvements to their household income, they, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, they would still be eligible to apply for a unit in a higher income band. So, for example, if there's a household that has an employee that's at 50% of AMI, and let's say by the time the lottery is conducted, that they would be in the 80% AMI. They'd still be able to pursue that type of opportunity. And we think that given the extent of the need and the breadth of the different types of FTEs that our employees work, we have many paraeducators that most of our paraeducators work 5 to 6 hours a day. So in many cases, there would be a fair number of households, we think, that would, based on a part-time schedule, qualify for the more deeply subsidized units. It's sort of at the top end of the range that I think some of our employee households might sort of price out or be priced out, or have their incomes improve to a degree that they would not be eligible for the more highly subsidized, for the less subsidized units.
Okay, thank you for that. I do fully expect that UE members will grab up all these units, but just in case it didn't happen, could we open it up to, say, SEIU employees of the district?
Yes, so the I believe it was last January of 2021, we presented an action item which the board adopted that actually specified exactly that, various classifications in our certificated unit, which correspond with UESF classifications, and paraeducator classifications they received the highest preference, if you will, and followed by all other SFUSD employees.
All right, thanks. I remember that now. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, we'll move on. The next information item is status update on the implementation of the SFUSD 2016 General Obligation Bond Program. Chief Kamalanathan, are you going to take this?
Actually, Commissioner, I'm going to introduce our Bond Program Manager, Lucinia Berry, who will be providing the update.
Great. Welcome, Ms. Berry.
Great. Hi. Good evening, Lucinia Berry. I'm going to walk you through just what we've been working on the last month. I came for the first time last month and presented sort of an overall summary. I think from here forward, we'll kind of focus on what's going on month to month, unless y'all have questions and want us to dig deeper into the past or to a more comprehensive summary. Okay. Let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, great. So in terms of our next bond sale, last month we reported that it was going to happen in March. We actually, in conversation with the finance team internals at SFUSD, given their kind of reporting requirements and the transition to the Empower system internally, we are now targeting April for that. I think we feel confident that within the full team that this timeline is not going to shift again. The rest of these things we'll cover through the slides, so we can just move forward into the active projects update. Great. So we have several sites still under construction, many of them finishing up construction. George Washington High School and APG Nini are at the tail end of the projects. Hillcrest, as you might know, there's a new building that's just commencing construction, so that project is going to take us through the next couple of years. Marina and Sheridan have just finished, are now in closeout. Thurgood Marshall is still under construction, similar to Hillcrest, will take into the next few years. Mission Bay School is at the tail end of the planning phase, and we're going to talk about that a little bit further into the slide deck, as well as Buena Vista Horace Mann. We have just initiated the project assessment phase and architect selection for that project. Go ahead to the next slide. Here's some more detailed information on some of our active projects. George Washington High School, we are just finishing up installation of the new windows in the gym building. APG and Nini, you can see a photo here of the renovated serving line in the kitchen. Final classrooms that we have to do work on there are under construction as well. Marina Middle School, we are closing up, as I said, so we're moving into interim housing, finishing up site work, and just doing the final touches to building D. Hillcrest Elementary, the new building is just starting. We met with the site a couple of weeks ago to really sort of end the modernization project and start the new construction phase. The fences have gone up, construction trailers moving in, so we are getting ready to start there. And at Thurgood Marshall, the CTE kitchen and the classroom renovation is ongoing. We did hear a report from our partners at SNS that the CTE kitchen progress is very good, and they're very excited to bring that into the district. This is really just a reminder of the allocation of the $100 million that went to 135 bars. As you all know, the split in green is the new projects that are funded out of that. Just as to lead us into the next slide. We are meaningfully moving forward in different rates of speed and levels of detail with all of the items that are part of the reallocation. The Southeast Facility Master Planning sort of overall program and process is kind of right now in a stakeholder engagement moment. Dawn has been very involved with the principals and the community in the Southeast to sort of set priorities and have high-level policy conversations. The schoolyard improvements, we are moving into our first planning and stakeholder engagement meetings coming up in about a month or so. We have been involved in very detailed internal staff discussions about how to create this implementation program, which I think a lot of people have expressed a lot of interest in working on, which is cool. The site security program, we are in the process of assessing sort of everything that we have already in place and figuring out where the gaps are so that we can craft that program. We are going through the different facility condition assessments, which will give us information on all of the school sites and non-school sites, but school sites first, and give us the information we need to help us prioritize how to move forward in facility ordering and understand sort of which schools have the greatest need from this particular data angle. And then we are also, we can just move into the next slide for Mission Bay and Buena Vista, which are the last two reallocation items. So Mission Bay, we have been briefing some members of the board on the EIR, and we are a bit in a holding pattern on that until the next couple of weeks when we will continue the briefing. We had a meeting with a focus group of stakeholders in February, and we will be heading to the larger neighborhood in March to present kind of the status of the project. And really the status is wrapped up in these five major agreements that we have listed here that are all the items that the board is going to need to act on in order for us to move forward with that project. We will have detailed briefings with each of you and come back most likely to this group for a detailed conversation around this. So I'm not going to go into detail on this today, but essentially we will be coming to the board for certification of the EIR, for Title V findings of site suitability, for the property acquisition, the land transfer, and the easement agreement with UCSF, for the design build construction contract that will enable us to move forward into schematic design and then ultimately construct the building, and then for the educational spec, which is the last thing we need to come to the board for. And then as far as Buena Vista Horace Mann, we have been, between all of us and the bond team staff, we've been spending a lot of time on this site. We have been actively working to make some short-term improvements, including, addressing some of the most urgent kind of safety items that we have identified on the site. We have addressed, I think, 28 work orders since the beginning of January, open and closed, and we are meeting weekly with the administration there to get sort of an up-to-date accounting of urgent items that we can address. And with Dawn's sort of direction to the Buildings and Grounds team, have also been responding to complaints and work orders that are issued within 24 hours at that site, at least with an initial, like, yes, we got yours, we're working on it, and we will follow up with you. So we have been meeting with the community as well. We had two stakeholder kind of virtual events, one end of January, one end of February. And we also released a request for proposals to add an outreach consultant to the broader team. And the proposals for that are due, well, we're due today at 5. And we also, as I said before, our project manager, Roxana, is meeting weekly with the site. We have initiated the project assessment phase with selection of the architect. The architect will be Meeknell and Tam. And we did meet with the site and ask them for some qualifications they were seeking in a design team, which is a departure from how we usually do things. We usually just select based on our internal understanding of the design team suitability. But in this case, we did ask, and the principal provided some questions for the architect teams to respond to around the issues of equity and universal design, which was, I think, really well received by the architect teams, and Meeknell and Tam definitely provided the best responses, and I think is a good fit. I think the school also agrees with us that that's a great fit. So that's where we are. We are meaningfully moving forward, and yeah, we're excited about the Buena Vista Horace Mann project. I think that's the last slide.
I'm excited for it too. Thank you for that presentation. Let's see if there's any public comment on this item.
If you'd like to speak to this item, please raise your hand. Seeing one, Commissioner.
All right, we'll give 2 minutes.
Go ahead, Supriya.
Hi, everyone. This is Supriya Ray calling. I am calling, as I often do, about outdoor matters. You're probably not surprised to hear from me. So I wanted to point out that nothing has happened with regard to the outdoor school funding, which is very disappointing to us. It has been 4 months, more than 4 months, since the board approved at least $7 million and up to $14 million to be spent on outdoor uses. We were told before that November and December were not a good time to, move forward, and that folks would be ready to go in January. That did not happen. We were then told the bond sale hadn't gone through yet, and that, meetings couldn't happen. It's not at all clear to me, and it never has been, why things could not have gone forward from an earlier point. And I would think that it would make a great deal more sense and be a more efficient use of time to have people meeting and to be reaching out to stakeholders from the beginning. At any event, we are now 4 months past when the money was first allocated, and we've been offering our support in any way that we can help for a very long time, long before the bond funding was even allocated. And we worked hard, and we appreciate the boards having voted that money in. It doesn't make any sense to me fundamentally to keep waiting to convene stakeholders and reach out to them. We all know how much money is on the table, and it would be a good idea to start getting people talking about this. I know that there are schools that want to reach out and make use of this money, and they have sort of no one to go to and no one to talk to right now. So I think this is really an unfortunate missed opportunity. I hope that folks will get this stakeholder group going as soon as possible so that we can move on this. And, we could have been using and making efforts to help schools and help plan now. All this time is gone. Let's not waste more time. Please, please get moving on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
My name is Ann Cervantes, and I'm an architect here in San Francisco, but I'm also was on the city's recovery task force, COVID task force, where as an outgrowth, we set up a stakeholder group and it turned into an organization, which is now the San Francisco Latino and Black Builders Association, which includes of contractors, BIPOC contractors, and A&E services. My question to you, since the bond had a selection process, why are there new architects being introduced into new scope of work that's covered by the bond? That's the first question. The second question, there's discussion of equity. Why doesn't the board adopt an equity policy on their contracts without violating 209? One of the ways that we found it with other departments is using the best value procurement process, where in your IFQ, you can set all the criteria that you need for inclusion. So I'm not understanding why the district is introducing new policy. And then also, there needs to be a small business policy that includes BIPOC community, and it's not covered. You can do that. I don't understand why the assessment of the existing buildings was given to an outside firm in Canada, where there's a lot of local firms trying to cover here in the city of San Francisco. So I ask you to really look at what your selection process was covering this bond, and why there are new criteria introduced with this new school. So I'll leave that comments. Thank you. I'll look for your response.
Thank you.
Lawrence?
Thank you for your comments. And thank you for joining the staff here. It's great to see everybody working so hard. My question is about the facilities assessment. I understand that was a process that was promised a few months ago and delayed without reason. I'm trying to catch up with understanding the timeline going forward. I understand that projects would be better if they're continually funded as opposed to having big gaps in funding. And I understand that the city has windows of bonds being asked between different departments in the city. And so if there's a delay in the window for facility spending from the school district, it would affect the bond spending propositions from other parts of the city. So having a sense of the timeline of the facilities assessment, as well as the public feedback and all that steps to get ready for the next bond would be something that the public can appreciate, because as we all know, that's really important. The big customers are these students and their facilities. So if there's delays, it's okay, but sharing that information with the public is super important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg?
Yes, hi, thank you. Following up on what Lawrence said, and I'll be extremely brief, I'll be a little more pointed. We've been talking about a November 2022 GO bond for years. The facilities condition assessment was a prerequisite to that. That has been delayed for better or worse for whatever reason. Can we just go ahead and set expectations that there will be no November 2022 bond, or will there be? Is that going to happen or not? I think it's a very simple question that the public should know and this committee should be asking. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, Commissioner.
All right, thank you so much. So we'll go to our commissioners. Commissioner Boas.
Perfectly fine. Thank you. I just had a few questions, I think, just to get a little bit more clarity. In regard to the schoolyard group that's being pulled together, is there someone from the instructional curriculum side that is going to be a part of that process when it actually comes together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Commissioner, thank you for that question. And I appreciate everyone's patience with this. For one, we are scheduling, but have not yet sent out invitations as we try and basically get our own internal schedules aligned. But our hope is to have a stakeholder workshop in around 3 to 4 weeks from today. And so just want to put that out there and apologize, we have not yet, gotten invitations out, but that's the timing. As part of that, our staff, so we have a number of people working on this. We've got our own bond team, Lucinia Berry, as well as project managers who have supported this work in the past. And we also have a Green Schoolyard coordinator, Tamar Barlev, who's working, quite heavily on helping us pull together a plan for these projects. Tamar is in very regular contact and has been for years as we coordinate our Green Schoolyard capital projects with our instructional colleagues at Curriculum and Instruction. I think particularly Vanessa Carver, and I apologize if I'm misstating anyone's name or getting it not exactly right, but I believe Vanessa Carver, whose exact title eludes me, but who basically works on outdoor learning and nature education, has been a longtime partner to the capital program. And we are continuing to collaborate with them. Also, I want to call out the work of the iLab, who works with school sites around design thinking, applying design thinking to school site problems. And the iLab right now is actually working with a handful of SFUSD sites to help them think through the question of what they need in outdoor classrooms, okay, and what has worked and hasn't worked for schools. That user experience data is essential. And so while I apologize for the under communication and maybe under sharing of that effort is underway to help school sites, including, I believe, Jefferson Elementary, not to mention other school sites that have experimented with and kind of been at the leading edge of thinking about how to incorporate outdoor time into their instructional time. So that effort is going on as well. And as we convene the stakeholder workshop, we want to include all of those voices and those partners inside SFUSD, as well as external stakeholders such as Ms. Singh, but also partners, whether it's our stormwater diversion partners at the PUC, who have also worked with us on projects, Trust for Public Land, and others who have helped to, as well as Sharon Danks and the Nature Education Network folks. We want to make a space and a workshop that will be able to incorporate feedback from all of those partners, as well as general public who might want to participate. So that workshop is coming, and our team has made good progress internally in beginning to think about the shape of projects and how we might organize a process to support sites, but also one that really places principals at the center, right? And that really emphasizes principal sponsorship as an essential element for project success.
I appreciate that. And I would just say, I think that's something that I feel really strongly about, figuring out how we create more ways to give educators, students, and families more access to outdoor learning spaces, green spaces to play in, and really just want to, I think, be an integral part of helping us to do that. And so I think if there's anything that the board can do, understanding that there are a lot of pressing priorities right now that we're working on, but just to figure out if there's a role the board can play in supporting as we move this forward. The next question I had, and this may be my question every time this is brought up, is around the mission-based school, and just specifically around the enrollment projections. And I'm just trying to still kind of get a grasp on the varying projections we're getting for our kind of current enrollment trends versus the enrollment trends that we're projecting for Mission Bay, and just kind of how we kind of settle those.
Great. Commissioner, appreciate that feedback, Commissioner. I think Carissa Finley is probably best equipped to respond in more detail. Happy to invite her to a future meeting to just focus on that specific topic.
No, that's great. I would appreciate that. The second to last thing that I had is just in regard to the projects that were listed in the timeline. How many of them kind of met their projected budget, or like, did they go over, did they go under, were they on time? And also, were there any negative impacts to the sites during construction that's worthwhile for us to note? I do feel like I hear from a lot of school sites that phone systems are going down and other kind of mishaps because of the construction. I'm just kind of wondering how we're tracking that and kind of supporting school sites to navigate the construction process.
Thanks, Commissioner Bozis. So in terms of schedule, we can provide to you, if you want, like a detailed kind of rundown of the schedule performance and budget performance of the project. I can say that, as went many construction projects during COVID, so went our projects, and there are budget overruns on most of the projects that bid during COVID, and those are due to both uncertainty of the project construction and increases in materials costs, as well as sort of new protocols that were required on site and like distancing and whatever during construction. But I think that would be kind of an interesting and meaningful report to provide if that is of interest to you all. And in terms of construction, sort of issues during construction, let me get that. I will request from the project managers that they put together some information on that too.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the effort and especially the additional details. I would love to get that information. I think a big part of it for me is just really wanting to have a lot more just transparency for us as the board and for the public of kind of what's happening, how much we're spending, just so people can kind of see it and know. I think the city has set a bad example of like what corruption looks like. And I think for us, it kind of creates a higher standard for us to kind of be more transparent, more open, more accessible. I definitely know there's been lots of calls from the public to kind of have just a more open and transparent process. And so I think trying to figure out how to do that in a way that isn't going to burn staff out and really kind of take you away from your primary job, which is making sure these projects get complete, but kind of find the balance of both. And so I just appreciate you and just really interested in getting more information and kind of creating more transparency. Thank you.
Before Commissioner Lamb, I just wanted to add on, I guess West Portal and Denman projects were taken off this bond. So that was an impact, a negative impact to some of our schools right there. So we will be looking forward to the next bond and bonds to rectify that issue. And to that point, just about the next bond, we'll have that as an information item at the next B&G meeting. Okay, so Commissioner Lamb.
Thank you. And thank you to staff for all of the work and the presentation. I also want to thank Commissioner Sanchez for chairing the meeting tonight. And thanks for allowing me to kind of drop in tonight. I do want to let the CBOC members know as well. I have to leave a meeting early. I have to double time and go to my other job and lead a facilitation there. So if I miss your presentation, I do apologize. I have more about comments than maybe questions. One is I'm glad to hear with the schoolyard, working group is coming together. I think it is long overdue, and certainly, however I can be of support, I do also want to engage and glad to hear that there is an integration between the facilities team and the curriculum, because that's so important. We know that that's hand in hand. In relation to the Southeast Facilities Master Plan and the facilities condition assessments, I'd be certainly interested in, with Commissioner Bogus around how that feeds into as we look at our student assignment policy and really that planning looking forward while, the student assignment policy is our elementary program. But I do think we've talked about, over how important it is to have a broader capital plan, which I know has been in the works, has been delayed because of COVID and clearly what the team is holding. But just wanted to at least really lift up that how important it is with these bond funds, how it relates to our entire portfolios of schools, how does that impact student learning and conditions, as well as policies that we've set forward, like the student assignment policy. So thank you for taking my comments. And feel free, staff, if there's anything you want to add, I welcome it.
Okay. Thank you, Vice President Lamb. I want to thank the staff as well for the presentation and all this hard work. I'm with Commissioner Bogus and Lamb around the outdoor learning issue. I think that as a teacher myself, as a fourth grade teacher, I would love to be involved and share any of my thoughts as this process moves forward. So please do invite me to the first meeting or any planning meetings, Chief Kamalanathan. And then I just wanted to ask a question around the teacher housing. In the bond, it says on slide 5, there's $5 million set aside for teacher housing. And in the other, the first item of tonight's meeting, there was the list of where the money's coming from, but it does not include that $5 million. Is this $5 million being reserved for future teacher projects, or am I missing something?
Commissioner, you are not missing something, and I'm looking for Deputy Superintendent Lee. Oh, there he is. If Deputy Superintendent Lee, I think, is probably best positioned to talk about the financing of FSK and the decision to not rely on GEO bond funding as part of that package.
Okay.
Thank you, Dawn. Yes, I can comment. I'll try to keep it brief, Commissioner Sanchez. So when the 2016 bond was placed on the ballot, there was, I'll sort of summarize to say, there was a degree of ambiguity about the appropriateness of using bond proceeds for that purpose. So we did include $5 million and wanted to leave ourselves the option to utilize that if that question became firmed up. However, when we pursued the financing for the Shirley Chisholm Village project, we were intentionally careful to not rely on it, as Chief Kamalanathan just put it, and that has remained true. So we were pleased and have been pleased that we've had other sources of funding, which Alicia Gaylord described in the first presentation. So in the meantime, it does seem that other districts, and I haven't done an exhaustive research study on this, to be honest, but it does seem like other districts have started to utilize their general obligation bonding mechanisms, their authorities to pursue educator housing. So, this is something that I think our peer districts or districts in other places in the state will also, what we can observe and learn from what happens in other places. And in the meantime, that $5 million is not being relied upon for Shirley Chisholm Village.
And then just remind us where that money's going to go to, if it's not going to that.
Yeah, to me, this is probably a question for you, Dawn. I mean, I think it's in some ways sort of like a bit of a contingency for general availability.
Yeah, I mean, Commissioner, that is correct, that the funds stay unexpended, right? And at this point, authorized but unexpended. To the extent that we continue to develop projects, those funds are available as well and can be utilized or applied as it's deemed desirable by any developer partnership. Or again, should the district pursue housing on its own, that is, funded more heavily through public funding streams. I'm sorry, they're all public funding streams, but I mean, debt issued funding streams. So I hope that answers your question. I think the other thing to know is at the amount of $5 million, that is a small amount, right, within the typical amount needed to deliver a project. And so while it is helpful kind of push it across the finish line money potentially, or get the ball rolling money in terms of design and thinking, it is not oftentimes substantive enough to actually help a deal pencil. And so for that reason, I think it's also been more useful to rely on other more traditional financing sources.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. And we have one more item. The last item is presentation from the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee on recommendations to improve transparency and bond program reporting.
Great. Commissioners, I'd like to introduce you tonight, Chair of our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, Ann Shu, who will be providing the presentation. Welcome, Ann.
Good evening, everyone. This is my first appearance in front of the Board of Education. So nice to meet Commissioners Lamb, Sanchez, and Boges. I know a couple of faces from the bond oversight, Don and Lasunia and Karen. It's nice to see you guys here. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. My name is Ann Shu, as Don introduced, and I am the chair of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And today, as you see, I'm glad I don't have to share screen you're sharing. Thank you very much. Didn't know how this worked. So I will be giving you the background of everything, of how we arrived at these recommendations, as well as the actual recommendations that the CBOC is making to SFUSD, as well as to the auditors. And the purpose, go back one. The purpose really is to enhance transparency for the public and voters of San Francisco. And this was approved. It was put together by all of the CBOC and approved by all of the members on October 6th of last year. Okay, next page, please. So a little bit of the background. Proposition 39 was passed in 2000, which required SFUSD to form a CBOC to oversee the expenditure of bond funds. And since then, there had been 4 bonds, 2003, 2006, 2011, and 2016. So as long as there's bond money outstanding, there should be a CBOC. So SFUSD CBOC was formed in 2004, following the 2003 bond sale, and met regularly all the way through August of 2018, which was the last official meeting of CBOC. And then sometime within the next year, all of the members' terms expired. So a CBOC was not formed until May 25th of 2021. So there were almost 3 years in between that there was no CBOC. After a brief introduction and training for the new members, I was one of 7 new members that were approved on May 25th of last year. And we met for the first time, I believe it was June 6th. We elected a chair and a vice chair. I'm the chair and Mr. Rex Ridgway is the vice chair, along with 5 other committee members. We got a brief introduction by the Bond Council, and then we were given the task to review and recommend for approval to the Board of Education the audit reports from fiscal year 2018 and fiscal year 2019. So fiscal year 18 encompasses fall to the spring of 2018, and then 19 includes this fall of 18 and 19. So I'll just call them fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19 going forward. And because we were all new to this, we had no context. We didn't know what CBOC was supposed to do. So we asked a lot of questions and we requested additional bond program information from the bond program as SFUSD staff. And we were given the annual financial summary and project financial reports for fiscal year 18 and 19. And then we went to work and met twice a month for June, July, and August. While the kids were playing, we were toiling away and reviewing the audit reports. And due to lack of training and context, the review took many, many hours. And questions led to discussions in all sorts of directions. I would say it's kind of a fun time, but it's also really a lot of work. And in order to be more focused and use our time wiser going forward, and ensure that the future audit reports and other bond program information can be reviewed more efficiently and effectively. And overall, to increase transparency for the general public so that the general public does not have to go through these hours and hours of questions and context in order to know what's going on. So, and we as CBOC members have and will commit to spending the time, but we don't think it's fair for the general public to spend all this time to understand everything. So we have made a number of recommendations to SFUSD and its auditors so that the general public can more easily understand what's going on and therefore increase the transparency of the bond program to the voters of San Francisco. And this document summarizes those recommendations. And just a note, the document also includes some benchmarking information from other public entities that also report on their bond programs, including some San Francisco agencies and other California school districts. Next page, please. So these are the summary recommendations, and the really two main buckets. One is to provide timely information to the public on a regular basis. And that includes quarterly and annual bond program updates from the bond program, annual financial and performance audit reports from the auditor, and at least annual reports from CBOC to the public as well as the Board of Education. Okay. Second bucket is that, sorry, that was my son. So that was a timely basis. Secondly is the information should be presented clearly, professionally, and easily digestible for the public. And we wanted to include some graphics. We want to have some groupings of specific data for easy comparison. And then we ask that the data and information be presented to us, the CBOC, and the public instead of requiring all of us to read dozens of pages of report and data and text. And lastly is to improve the CBOC website so that people can find information more easily. Okay, so those are the summary, and I'll dive into a bit of the detail here. Next, please. So by timely information on a regular basis. So I mentioned there were 3 years, no reports were made. After we've caught up on them, we would like to see quarterly and annual bond program updates from the bond program. Okay. The reports that we were given, the 2019 Q4 bond summary report and the 2019 project financial reports had good information, but we wanted to have some summary reports instead or in addition to reporting contract modifications. We wanted to include contract change orders and then some descriptions of how bond money was planned to be spent and eventually spent. And in project specific reporting, include the project types. Okay. And for projects that are still in progress, include their start date, plan completion date, budget, and to-date cost. I heard earlier that Commissioner Bo just asked about the budgets and stuff. So these are the reasonable questions that CBOC and the public also. Secondly, the annual and financial performance and audit reports from the auditor should, on the performance report part, include more on the soft cost, as well as the methodology and findings, okay? And evaluate whether to examine, whether 70% of every vendor's transaction or perhaps tune that number a little bit. And on the financial audit report, we wanted to include relevant content from the management letter that would help set the context. And we also want to include in the appendix some project lists with budgets and costs so that it's all in one place and we don't have to look at the audit report and then have to look at a different report to find the supporting information. And we actually have a separate document with specific audit scope recommendations that I will not review today, but it's been given to SFUSD as well as the auditor. And then we as CBOC want to report to the BOE at least annually, and we try to target quarterly. Next page. On the point of clear, professional, and easily digestible information to the public, we really want to see some graphics. Currently, the reports are full of text and numbers. While I personally am very comfortable with numbers and text, I think a lot of the public would prefer to see some summary graphics to more easily understand what's going on. And the project reporting should include master lists, projects with to-date costs and current year costs, grouped by project types, master lists with their budgets, expenditures, grouped by project type. Just this kind of more clear, professional, and easily digestible information to the public. That's what this title of this slide says. Okay, and we would like the bond program staff and auditor to present the information to CBOC with the public watching, so that it's just not talk and then relying on CBOC and the public to look through reports that are dozens and dozens of pages long. So we would like to see presentations. And then lastly, the CBOC website has some areas of improvement that's needed. Next. And here are some just examples of summary graphics. You know, we all know pie charts and bar charts, so that we know, what the project status is. These are from the Department of Public Works, just as examples of graphics. Next page. This is project grouping. So you see major projects, maybe some in our bond program, there are green yards, there are technology upgrades, whichever makes sense for us. This is an example from some other school district, right? But we would like to see our projects grouped by what our bond program projects are. Next. And then this is very important. It's budget versus commitments versus expenditures. Okay. This data is available, but they could be grouped better. Okay. This is an example. Next page. And then projects with budget deviations. And on the lower left bottom is a number of explanations or reason codes for projects that have budget deviations, whether it was cost escalation, whether I can hardly see project scope change, whether it's a leasehold payment or new projects. Again, these are example reasons. Whichever reasons that make sense to our bond program at SFUSD, we would like to see project with budget deviations be grouped by reasons. Okay. Next page. And then for any and every specific project, we like to see some pictures. We want to see more graphics to tell us what stage the project is at, and including where the money is coming from, whatever is specific to that particular project. We just want to see something simple and summary like this. Of course, the report may have several pages corresponding to this project, but we would like to see something like this presented. Next page. Again, I mentioned there's a report that's dozens of pages long, but we would like it to be summarized and presented to CBOC as well as the public for easier digestion. Next page. And lastly is the website. Website really is a very important vehicle to communicate information to the general public of what the bond program is about. And where are all the important documents? Right now, we do have a website, obviously, the CBOC website, but I think we can both navigationally as well as the information available on there can be improved. So we would like to work with the staff to identify immediate and easy to implement improvements. We're not looking at a wholesale overhaul of the website overnight, but I think we can gradually make some improvements to our website. This is an example of a best practice website from, I believe, the Long Beach School District. And I think that has been brought by many, even commissioners who believe that they do have some best practice, whether it's website or other ways of managing the school district. So I hope we can learn from them and gradually improve our website. Next page. So this was approved in October of last year. It's already 4 months, almost 5 months. We wanted to form a CBOC Transparency and Enhancement Subcommittee to work with staff and the auditor to prioritize recommendations for implementation. And then we wanted to present these to the Board of Education commissioners. I think we're doing this at the B&G committee, and next step would be to present to the full Board of Education, along with audit approval recommendation. Actually, I have a question to Don. Have we sent the resolution to the BOE already? I know I signed it.
We have not yet.
So should I review that after this presentation?
I think that should be a subsequent presentation because that will require action by the full board. We can discuss it later, Anne. Thank you for that question though. Yeah, because this is informational only.
I see.
And so we will agendize separately the resolution. Sorry if that wasn't clear.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. All right. So our Transparency Enhancement Subcommittee would work with the staff on these implementations of these recommendations and then report back to CBOC with implementation progress. So that is the set of our recommendations. I believe that's the last slide. Is it? Next slide.
Yes, it is. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Shu, so much for that presentation and all the hard work that went into it. Can we see if there's public comment on this item?
If you'd like to speak to this item, can you please raise your hand? See none, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bilgace?
Oh, wait, Greg had his hand raised because he's on the screen now and not.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Go ahead, Greg.
My apologies. I was a day late and a little short. All I wanted to say was to Ms. Shu and the committee, a lot of us have been following closely the CBOC work over the last year. And a lot of us are very grateful for the work you and the committee have done and are very, very appreciative of insisting on the transparency as we continue to spend down nearly $750 million just from the last bond. So thank you very much for this hard work. Thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we have more speakers, Commissioner. Lawrence, how long do you want to give him, Commissioner?
A minute.
A minute. Okay, Lawrence.
Thank you so much for this chance to speak on this item. Thank you so much, Chair Sue, for your comments on the work of the CBOC, which has been so consistently amazing from all the parent and the volunteers. I think that these recommendations are fantastic. They're not asking a lot compared to other school districts. And again, the CBOC committee can use more people. They can use architects, they can use construction professionals. This is a time when trust and faith can be improved quickly. So please consider acting on these. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Supriya. Supriya, there you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say thank you so much to Ms. Shu and to the CBOC committee for the work they're doing. This is incredibly important and critical. There's been so much trust and faith lost with SFUSD over the past couple of years in particular that I really hope that the committee's work will help to bring that back, and transparency is absolutely key to that. So I am very appreciative for the time that you are all spending to do this. And I hope that you will be able to keep a very close eye on what's going on with the bond spending, including with the reallocated 2016 bond spending that will be going to outdoor learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bilgace?
Thank you. I was wondering if staff had a fiscal analysis of the recommendations from the oversight group, or is that something that could be identified of just like how much it would cost for us to do the things that are recommended, or if there aren't costs associated with those things?
These are things we should be doing, Commissioner. These are not additional costs. We have a website which we currently maintain, but it is, let's say, it is, it is, I think, more archival than it is informative, right? It is not meant to help inform or provoke interesting questions or insights on the part of the end user. It is really an archive of documents that requires, I think that you have a good sense of what you're looking for in order to be able to find it. Let's put it that way. So the information is there, but it is not user friendly. In terms of the other financial reporting templates, we agree with CBOC. We have accepted, certainly in spirit, 100% of their recommendations, while we might continue to workshop the particular details of what reports and templates we settle on. And in fact, this Wednesday at our next CBOC meeting, we are going to be showing a new template that we've developed to talk about our bond projects and their funding sources, which we hope CBOC will like or find useful. And I think we look forward to working with them to reformat and think about our current reporting templates. There are no legal requirements driving our current reporting practices by and large. It is mostly past practice, and that gives us incredible flexibility to adapt them to be more useful for CBOC as well as other members of the public.
I would love to be a part of that process as well as a board member. And I would love to figure out how we have this conversation be a part of a larger conversation about transparency and kind of lots of other aspects in our district, to really just kind of have consistency throughout, and really figuring out how we are educating our students and families about the things that we're doing and the decisions that we're making. So I just think that's really exciting. And I think I have a hard time believing that those things that feel like more work for people that I imagine are busy won't cost us more resources. But if you tell me that, I think I believe it. But I think I'm curious then of like, what are the steps then that we need to take to put those into practice? And what are the things that are preventing us from doing them like today or tomorrow? To kind of really be able to figure out what we can do as a board to support the district, to really develop the infrastructure to really maintain and support something like this in kind of an ongoing way, because that's so different from kind of like how we operate in this moment.
Commissioner, appreciate those points. And if honestly this kind of request was being made of another team within the facilities division, I'd probably have a very different response. Like if we needed this level of reporting for the buildings and grounds team, I would say we really need additional resources and infrastructure in this case, because it is of the bond team, which has its own dedicated financial team, including a finance officer, as well as supporting accountants. I feel like we can manage this. But if you were to ask for this same level of reporting from custodial services or buildings and grounds, I would have a very different response. So appreciate the question and just want to provide that context of, I would not be saying, yeah, it's no problem for other things, but actually because the bond team and a GO bond does require a higher level of reporting, in terms of, for example, just getting a bond sale out the door, we have the infrastructure to do this. We just haven't had a clear set of templates that are user friendly. They're directed towards, for example, bond markets and investors, right? We've got this infrastructure set up to provide communications for a different kind of audience. So we just need to tune our existing information to be more accessible for your average voter, and will be, I think, much better shape. And I also think this is not going to take 6 months to get us there. I'm looking at our new bond program manager, the senior Barry, but she has also understands the importance of this and has already started working with our finance team to make adjustments.
Thank you so much for that. Excited to hear that good news and look forward to hearing updates soon about how we're doing all these things. It's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogus. I agree with everything you said. And I also want to just really appreciate Ms. Xu and her fellow bond Oversight Committee members for their work. We know that this is a lot of work. You've mentioned it many times, how many dozens and dozens of papers you have to read through. And I know a new endeavor like this and the recommendations you have put forward are doable, and we can accomplish this together. Now, I do have a suggestion about you're requesting to have an audience with the board 4 times a year. Could we do that 3 times a year during this committee and then 1 time with the full board? Would that work for you?
Yeah, we want to do what's reasonable. Yes, it's taken this long since October to even come before here. So I think it's probably unreasonable to want to go to the full board 4 times a year. But yes, we want to do what is reasonable and also what makes sense to increase transparency to the public.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I think it is reasonable to do this 3 times a year. Chief Kamalanathan, would that work with you as well? Yeah.
Commissioner, I think that's a super healthy practice to use Buildings and Grounds Committee as the routine place for surfacing these issues and creating that dialogue. And then actually, I believe by mandate, CBOC is entitled to an annual audience and report to the full board. So.
Okay, excellent. Well, if there's no other comments or questions, I really want to appreciate everybody for this meeting, and we are adjourning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.